5 years ago, she broke the heart of the man she loved, sacrificing herself for a future that would never be hers. He left, vowing never to look back. But fate, cruel and ironic, brought him back. Not as the passionate student she abandoned, but as a billionaire fiancé with the power to destroy or rewrite the past. She hid the most painful truth of all, and now a secret about to explode could cost an innocent life. Are you ready to discover the price of silence? Before we start the story, leave a comment and tell us which city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10 at the end. Enjoy the story. The morning fog still kissed the streets of a small university town in inland California. But inside Sophia's small apartment, the sun already shone intensely, reflected in the eyes of a love that seemed invincible. Sophia, barely 20, exuded the sweetness and resilience of someone who had learned to cherish every tiny ray of light. Her brown hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders, and her smile, her smile was capable of dissipating any dark cloud that dared to approach. She didn't have much in material terms, but her soul was rich in dreams, empathy, and an almost palpable kindness. The daughter of a simple family, Sophia worked full-time at the local coffee shop to help at home, and in a few free hours, she devoured books at the city library, nurturing the desire for a different future for herself and her loved ones. Her world, however, revolved around a single name, Daniel. Daniel was Sophia's complementary opposite. He, a brilliant and ambitious young man with a promising future, was already acclaimed by his professors as a prodigious mind. His intense eyes and the smile that rarely appeared, but which could melt Sophia's heart, revealed a depth she loved to unravel. They met in the library, among piles of books and study whispers, and from there, a love was born that seemed predestined. A youthful love, yes, but with the intensity and depth of 1,000 years. Their encounters were filled with whispered promises under the moonlight, plans for a future together, laughter echoing in empty parks, and touches that set their souls ablaze. Daniel, with his sharp intellect and worldview, seemed destined to conquer the world, and Sophia, with her sweetness and unwavering support, was the safe harbor to which he always returned. They were the personification of contrast, simplicity and ambition, calm and effervescence. But together, they formed a perfect balance. The flame of this youthful romance burned stronger each day. They shared everything: dreams, fears, small victories, and defeats. Daniel, who came from a middle-class family, dreamed of becoming a great entrepreneur, but opportunities were scarce. Sophia was his biggest motivator, believing in him with unwavering faith. "You're going to make it, Daniel," she would say, her eyes shining. "The world is yours, I know it." He, in turn, promised her a future where the difficulties would be distant memories. "One day, Sophia, I'll give you everything you deserve. A life without worries, where your dreams can flourish." These promises were the foundation of a love that seemed unbreakable, built on the rock of mutual admiration and complicity. They spent hours discussing the world's challenges, about how they would build an empire of happiness together. But fate, cunning and merciless, was already weaving its threads of intrigue. Life, with its cruel irony, had very different plans for the young lovers. One day, Sophia woke up with a strange feeling, a persistent malaise that made her fear the worst. That premonition was confirmed by the coldness of the pregnancy test. Positive. A mix of shock, joy, and panic overwhelmed her. She was pregnant. Their love had generated a new life, a small miracle beginning to blossom inside her. Her eyes filled with tears, but they weren't just from fear. They were also from overwhelming happiness. A daughter. She could already imagine the tiny arms, the baby smell, the first steps. The news, she thought, would be a turning point in Daniel's life. They would marry, build their family, and the dreams of a future together would gain a new and powerful dimension. Sophia's heart pounded as she fantasized about the moment she would tell Daniel, the joy he would feel, the way he would hug and kiss her, promising to take care of them. But before Sophia could even articulate the words, Daniel burst into the apartment, his eyes shining with an intensity she had never seen. Her mouth opened to tell him her big news, but he interrupted her, his voice choked with emotion, his arms raised in a gesture of triumph. "Sophia, you won't believe it. I made it. I got a full scholarship to Stanford University. It's my chance, my love, the chance of our lives." His words hit Sophia like lightning, freezing the smile on her lips and transforming joy into deep shock. Stanford University, in another state, far away. His vivid dream violently collided with the reality growing inside her. Her eyes met his, overflowing with pure and genuine happiness. And in that moment, Sophia felt the weight of the world crash down on her shoulders. How could she tie Daniel, a man destined for greatness, with the news of an unexpected pregnancy? She would be a burden, an obstacle on his path to success. Fate's irony was cruel. The same love that bound them now seemed to demand her sacrifice for his ascent. She pressed her lips together, her heart beating erratically, and forced a smile, hiding the whirlwind of emotions that consumed her. Daniel's joy was so contagious that any trace of selfishness dissipated in her heart. He deserved that chance, and she would not be the reason he lost it. That image of him, so happy and fulfilled, would be the last memory of an innocent love before the world tore them apart. The decision was painful, bitter, but for Sophia, it seemed the only option. That night, under a starry sky that seemed to mock her anguish, Sophia found Daniel. He was euphoric, drawing up plans for the future, envisioning them together in an apartment in Palo Alto, with him studying and her finding a good job. He spoke with a fervor that only love and ambition could inspire. The lump in Sophia's throat tightened with every word he uttered. She loved him so much that the pain of seeing him suffer was unbearable, but the pain of being an obstacle in his path was even greater. With trembling hands, she called him aside, her heart heavy as lead. "Daniel, I need to tell you something." Her voice barely came out. He looked at her, his expression changing from euphoria to curious concern. "What is it, my love? You look strange." She closed her eyes for a moment, the image of the ultrasound burning in her mind.
I can't go with you." Daniel's surprise was evident. "What? Why not? We planned everything. I even looked at some apartments." He hugged her, trying to reassure her. "Is it fear, Sophia? Don't worry. We'll get through this together. I love you."
But she pulled back. With each step, each word Daniel uttered about their future, the deeper she buried herself in the lie she was about to tell. "No, Daniel, it's not fear. It's that I don't love you anymore." The words, uttered with a coldness that tore her own soul, echoed in the night's silence. Daniel froze, as if he had been punched in the stomach. His face, once lit with hope, darkened into a mix of disbelief and pain. "What? No, it can't be. You're joking, aren't you? Sophia, look into my eyes and tell me you don't love me. I don't believe you." He tried to hold her hands, but she pulled away, her eyes moist but her voice firm, though inside she was crumbling. "I'm telling the truth, Daniel. I can't be with you anymore. Our love has no future. You have your dreams, I have mine. It's better this way." He pleaded, his voice choked, his eyes fixed on her, searching for a single clue, a single sign that she was lying. "Sophia, please, give me a reason. Did I do something wrong? I can change. Don't throw everything away like this. Our love, it's real, Sophia. You can't just give up." But Sophia stood firm, her mask of coldness unwavering even as every fiber of her being screamed for her to run into his arms, to tell him the truth, and surrender to the happiness he promised. She knew that by sacrificing herself, she was giving him the chance for a grand future, a future that she, with their child in her womb, could not offer without becoming a burden. "There's nothing to explain, Daniel. It's over. Go your own way." Tears streamed down Daniel's face, but she couldn't give in. He watched her leave, his heart shattered, believing she had given up on their love without a single explanation. The image of Sophia turning her back, her silhouette fading into the gloom, would be etched in his memory, a deep scar that would accompany him for the next 5 years. He left days later, a devastated man, carrying with him the bitterness of a betrayed love and the silent promise never to allow himself to be so vulnerable again. 5 years passed, and time, which for some is a balm, for others is a relentless executioner. Daniel, The dreamy young man who left with a broken heart returned to the small town no longer as the promising student, but as Daniel Foster, the CEO of a billion-dollar tech company. His eyes, once full of youthful sparkle, now carried the depth and intensity of one who had fought battles and emerged victorious. Every gesture, every word exuded authority and power. His impeccable suit, the priceless watch on his wrist, and his proud posture betrayed his radical transformation. He had conquered the world, as Sophia had predicted. His company, Foster Tech, was a global empire, and his name was synonymous with innovation and success. He was respected, feared, and admired. However, behind the facade of an invincible businessman, the resentment of the past still pulsed, a wound that time had not completely healed. The image of Sophia walking away into the night, those chilling words, still echoed in his mind. He had transformed pain into fuel, channeling all his energy into building his empire, vowing to himself that he would never again allow anyone to hurt him so deeply. He had built a wall around his heart, an impenetrable fortress. By his side, or rather in his orbit, was Vanessa Dubois, his fiancée. Vanessa was the embodiment of elegance and sophistication, a woman whose beauty was as imposing as her ambition. Her platinum blonde hair framed a face with delicate features and astute eyes. She was the daughter of a real estate magnate, and the engagement between Daniel and Vanessa was a strategic arrangement, a business alliance between two powerful families. Love, for them, was a bargaining chip, an irrelevant detail in a game of power and influence. Vanessa, despite her stunning beauty, possessed a calculating coldness, a sharp mind for manipulation, and an insatiable thirst for status and control. She saw Daniel not as a life partner, but as a stepping stone to ascend even higher in the elite circle. Her comments were always venomous, her actions calculated to maintain her position and ward off any threat. While Daniel ascended to the top of the world, Sophia, the same pure-hearted Sophia, battled life's adversities with a silent and unwavering strength. 5 years had left their marks, but they hadn't managed to erase the sweetness from her gaze. Her hair was now pulled back in a simple bun, and her clothes, though clean, were worn and humble. She had traded library books for buckets and cleaning rags, her soft hands now calloused from hard labor. The pregnancy, the cause of her painful decision, had become the center of her universe. Her daughter, little Helena, was the reason for her existence, the light that illuminated her darkest days. Sophia worked as a cleaner in a series of offices and residences to support her daughter alone, facing daily prejudice and humiliation with her head held high. She was a single mother, and society, in its silent cruelty, often looked upon her with disdain. But Sophia did not bow down. Every drop of sweat shed was for Helena, for a future that she, with all her faith, believed would be better. She taught Helena about the value of hard work, honesty, and compassion, even when life seemed to test their limits at every turn. "Mom, one day I'll take care of you," Helena would promise, with her tiny arms around Sophia's neck. And those words were the engine that pushed her to keep going, not to give up. Fate, with its perverse sense of humor, orchestrated the first reunion between Daniel and Sophia in a way that bordered on cruelty. Daniel had returned to his hometown to oversee the opening of a new branch of his company, a gigantic glass and steel building that dominated the skyline. In that very building, Sophia worked as part of the night cleaning crew. The scene seemed to have been taken from a Greek drama script, with the stark contrast between the splendor of power and the invisibility of manual labor. It was a rainy night, and Daniel, after a long meeting, was leaving his office on the top floor when he saw her. Sophia was in the entrance hall, scrubbing the floor with a bucket and mop, her back bent, her face marked by fatigue, but her eyes,
even in the dim light of the lobby, still carried the same gentle light. Daniel stopped, motionless, as if time had frozen. The sight of her, so humble and fragile, shocked him deeply. The resentment of 5 years exploded in his chest, a wave of anger mixed with a pain he thought he had overcome. He watched her for a moment, his heart beating with a force that startled him. How had she fallen so far, and why, even after everything, did seeing her still affect him that way? Sophia, oblivious to his presence, continued her work, softly humming a lullaby that Helena loved. It was the sound of her voice that brought him out of his trance. He approached, his footsteps echoing on the polished marble. Sophia looked up, and her eyes met his. The world seemed to spin in slow motion. The shock was mutual. Sophia's eyes widened, and the color drained from her face. Daniel, her Daniel, stood there before her, imposing, elegant, with a gaze that mixed disdain and a veiled pain. It was him, unmistakable, but transformed. Sophia. He uttered her name with a cutting coldness, each syllable laden with bitterness. She felt a shiver run down her spine. His voice, once so sweet, was now a whip. Daniel! Her voice barely came out, choked with emotion. He said nothing more, just stared at her, his blue eyes like ice, scrutinizing every detail of her face, her simple clothes, her rough hands. The silence was heavy, charged with years of unspoken pain, broken promises, and a love that seemed to have died.
He broke the silence again, his voice laden with an ironic tone that deeply hurt her. It seems life hasn't been so kind to you, has it, Sophia? Or perhaps this is the life you chose. His words were like knives, piercing her already wounded heart. She felt tears well up in her eyes, but she refused to cry in front of him. Not now. She straightened her posture, her gaze firm, though inside she was crumbling. Life is as it is, Daniel. Everyone reaps what they sow, she replied, her voice trembling, but filled with dignity. He laughed, a humorless laugh that echoed in the empty lobby. Indeed, and I sewed very well, as you can see. He gestured with his hand, encompassing the luxurious hall, the company he had built from scratch. She felt the humiliation hit her hard, but refused to show it. He took another step closer, his eyes fixed on hers. I still wonder, what made you give up everything? Us? The question was a dart, but she couldn't answer. The truth was a secret she carried alone, a weight she couldn't share. That's water under the bridge, Daniel. It doesn't matter anymore, she said, turning her face, unable to bear the intensity of his gaze. He grabbed her arm, his warm hand squeezing the fabric of her blouse. It matters, Sophia. It always mattered. You broke me, Sophia. You made me believe I wasn't good enough. She broke free from his grip, her dignity wounded, but her pride unyielding. You never mattered to me, Daniel. You were just a step on my path, she lied, and the lie hurt her more than the pain of seeing him. He took a sharp inhale, his anger palpable. I see. So it was all a charade, wasn't it? That love, the promises, all a lie. He looked at her with contempt, and Sophia felt a pang of guilt, but stood firm. She couldn't risk his future. Exactly. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to continue my work. Unlike you, I have to work to live. She saw him clench his fists, anger simmering in his eyes. He turned abruptly and left, his footsteps echoing on the marble, leaving Sophia alone in the lobby, tears streaming freely down her face, now that he wasn't there to see them. The pain of the reunion, Daniel's coldness, and the humiliation she felt were a devastating blow. But behind his anger, Sophia had caught something, a fleeting sparkle in his eyes, a flicker of repressed love that, she knew, still existed. But the price of that love was too high to pay.
Sophia's life was a delicate dance between hope and despair. Helena, her 5-year-old daughter, was the personification of sweetness and intelligence, a girl with curious brown eyes and a smile that could light up the darkest day. She had the same silent strength as her mother, the same ability to find joy in small things. But behind the facade of a seemingly normal childhood, a shadow lurked. Helena had been showing worrying symptoms: extreme fatigue, unexplained fevers, and a paleness that alarmed Sophia. After a series of medical consultations and tests, the news hit like a bomb. Helena suffered from a rare disease, a blood condition that required a bone marrow transplant. The girl's life expectancy depended on a biological donation from a compatible donor.
Sophia's world crumbled once again. She immediately underwent compatibility tests, but the result was a crushing blow. She was not compatible. The pain of not being able to save her own daughter was agonizing, an unbearable burden for a mother. The doctors explained the urgency of the situation, the need to find a donor in a timely manner. Sophia's drama intensified. With each passing day, time seemed to run out, and little Helena's life hung by a thread. She found herself immersed in a labyrinth of bureaucracy, waiting lists, and a race against time to find a donor who could save her daughter's life. That was the common enemy, the disease, the true threat hanging over the small family. While Sophia faced tragedy in silence, the villain, Vanessa Dubois, had already noticed the rapprochement, albeit a cold one, between Daniel and Sophia. Their reunion in the building lobby did not go unnoticed by Vanessa's eyes, who had informants everywhere. A photo of the two, discreetly taken by one of her loyal employees, reached her hands, awakening a voracious jealousy and an even greater thirst for control. Vanessa could not stand the idea that any woman, especially a cleaner, could have any kind of connection with her Daniel. For her, Sophia was a threat to her status, her reputation, her business alliance. Vanessa, with her strategic mind, began to weave a web of intrigues around Sophia. Her actions were calculated, her words poisonous. She made sure that Sophia was publicly humiliated, using her power and influence to create awkward situations. At the supermarket, she would make a point of implying that Sophia was begging for handouts. At charity events where Daniel and she attended, Vanessa would make derogatory comments about the lack of class of certain people, casting significant glances at Sophia, who was often there, cleaning bathrooms or serving guests. She even subtly infiltrated Sophia's life, hiring her to clean her own house, only to humiliate her up close, throwing cash on the floor and demanding that Sophia pick it up, always with a fake smile on her lips. "Oh, Sophia, you're so efficient. It's a shame life hasn't been so generous to you, has it?" Every action of Vanessa's was a calculated blow, aiming to undermine Sophia's self-esteem and push her away from Daniel. Contrast was Vanessa's watchword. She made a point of showing Daniel the abysmal difference between the luxurious life she offered and the poverty that Sophia represented. Despite the mask of coldness and the resentment he displayed, Daniel began to approach Sophia in almost imperceptible way. The curiosity about the past, about the real reason for their breakup, never left him. The sight of Sophia so vulnerable, so humiliated, aroused in him not only anger, but also a pang of empathy, a remnant of the love he swore he had forgotten. He watched her from afar, his eyes searching for hers in the crowd, his heart accelerating with a frequency that bothered him. Small, almost invisible gestures revealed that his feelings for her were still there, latent beneath layers of pride and pain. He would have his private secretary accidentally make a mistake on purpose and have Sophia clean his personal office. When Sophia was cleaning, he always found an excuse to pass by, forgetting a document or looking for something just to observe her. He saw her trying hard, taking care of every detail, and a strange admiration began to sprout in his chest, contradicting all his anger. He provoked her, yes, with harsh words and sarcasm, trying to hide the whirlwind of emotions he felt. "Still haven't found a better job, Sophia? Or do you like being near my shining shoes?" he would say, his voice mixing scorn and a strange melancholy. Sophia, in turn, responded with the same dignity, her eyes fixed on his, challenging him. But with each confrontation, each exchange of barbs, the wall he had built around his heart began to show small cracks. He couldn't deny to himself that her presence still deeply affected him. Her scent, the sound of her voice, the way she moved, everything awakened memories he struggled to repress. One day, Daniel found her in an empty corridor, her eyes red and swollen. He, despite his cold demeanor, felt a pang in his chest.
What happened, Sophia? Crying? Is a cleaner's life that hard? He asked, his voice softer than usual, the irony mixed with genuine concern. She looked at him, anger mixed with sadness in her eyes. It's none of your business, Daniel. And yes, it's hard. Much harder than you can imagine. She turned to leave, but he grabbed her arm. Wait, what happened? Are you okay? The question, so simple, coming from him, caught her by surprise. She hesitated for a moment, the need to confide battling against pride and the decision to keep the secret. My daughter, she's sick, very sick. The words came out in a whisper, and the tears she had held back for so long finally streamed down her face. Daniel felt a shock, a sharp pang in his chest. Daughter? She had a daughter? Why didn't you ever tell me? His voice was a mix of anger and confusion. Sophia looked at him, the pain in her eyes stronger than any other emotion. It wasn't your business, Daniel. And yes, it's hard, much harder than you can imagine. She turned and ran off, leaving Daniel alone in the corridor, his mind reeling with the revelation. That moment was a turning point, a crack in the fortress he had built around his heart. The existence of a daughter, Sophia's suffering, all of it began to dismantle his anger, paving the way for a deeper curiosity and an empathy he didn't realize he still possessed. That emotional encounter was just the beginning of a series of revelations that would change the course of their lives forever. But the worst was yet to come.
Fate, with its intricate plot, was about to play its most shocking cards. Helena's health took a drastic turn for the worse. Fevers became constant, and her small body, once full of energy, was now prostrated and fragile. Sophia, in despair, rushed her daughter to the hospital, where the girl was admitted in critical condition. With every beat of Helena's heart, Sophia felt her own break. She spent sleepless nights by her daughter's bedside, praying, crying, and promising herself that she would find a solution no matter the cost. The doctors, with their cruel honesty, reiterated the urgency of a compatible bone marrow donor. Time was scarce, and every minute that passed was one less minute in Helena's life.
In an act of desperation and not knowing where else to turn, Sophia, with the help of a hospital social worker, launched a campaign to find a compatible donor. Posters were put up, appeals were made on social media. Helena's moving story touched many hearts, and a line of volunteers formed to undergo compatibility tests. Daniel, who, despite his facade, had discreetly kept track of Sophia's life after their reunion and the revelation of her daughter, learned about the campaign through one of his employees. The news of Helena's illness hit him with an unexpected force. The image of Sophia crying, her voice choked when talking about her daughter, resurfaced in his mind. Something stirred in his chest, a restlessness he couldn't explain. He found himself, against his own will, thinking about the girl, about her mother. Driven by a curiosity he dared not admit, and perhaps by a lingering sense of compassion, Daniel decided to take the compatibility test, claiming it was a gesture of goodwill to the community, to his advisors. He never imagined, not even in his wildest nightmares, the truth that was about to be revealed. The test results arrived, and the doctor, with an expression that mixed surprise and relief, called Sophia for a private conversation. "Miss Sophia, we have extraordinary news. We found a compatible donor, and it's not just compatible, it's a 100% match." Sophia felt an overwhelming relief, tears streaming from her eyes. "Thank God. Who is the donor? I need to thank them." The doctor hesitated for a moment, her eyes meeting Sophia's. "It's Daniel Foster." His name echoed in the room, shocking Sophia to her core. Daniel, her daughter's father? The revelation hit her like a lightning bolt. The world spun and she felt the ground beneath her feet disappear. That was the secret she had kept at such a high cost, the truth that had tormented her for 5 long years. Helena was Daniel's daughter, and he was the only one who could save her. As Sophia tried to digest the bombshell, the news reached Daniel's ears in a much more direct and impactful way. The same doctor contacted him. "Mr. Foster, I need to speak with you about your test results. There's something crucial you need to know."
At the hospital, the doctor was direct, without mincing words. Mr. Foster, your compatibility tests were a success. You are 100% compatible with little Helena. And there's more. The genetic tests we perform in cases of such high compatibility revealed that you are her biological father. Daniel's world stopped. The doctor's words echoed in his mind, repeating incessantly, biological father. The ground opened beneath his feet. Helena was his daughter. The sweet, sick girl he barely knew, whom Sophia had hidden, was his blood, his flesh, his legacy. A flood of emotions hit him, anger at being deceived, at being deprived of 5 years of fatherhood, but also an overwhelming love and an uncontrollable desire to protect that small life. The image of Sophia crying, the coldness of her words at their reunion, everything began to make sense, a cruel and painful sense. She didn't love him anymore, but she had hidden the truth to protect him, to allow him to build his empire.
The confrontation between Daniel and Sophia was inevitable, charged with a dramatic intensity that bordered on unbearable. He found her in the hospital corridor, his blue eyes flashing with a mix of fury and pain. "Sophia, how could you? How could you hide this from me for 5 years? Helena is my daughter, he yelled, his voice hoarse, his fists clenched. Sophia shrank back, tears streaming down her face, guilt suffocating her. I'm so sorry, Daniel. I didn't want to get in your way. You had your dreams, your scholarship. I didn't want to be a burden." She tried to explain, but the words seemed empty in the face of her omission's magnitude. "A burden? A burden, Sophia? You stole 5 years of my daughter's life. You made me believe I wasn't good enough to love, to be a father." He grabbed her by the shoulders, the pain in his eyes more cutting than the anger. "Why, Sophia? Why did you do this?" She looked him in the eyes, the truth in her voice, but he couldn't accept it. "Because I loved you, Daniel. I loved you so much that I couldn't bear to see you give up your dreams because of me. I wanted you to fly, to conquer the world. I sacrificed myself for you, Daniel." The revelation was a devastating blow, but also a catalyst. Daniel, despite his anger, felt his love for Helena explode in his chest. The little sick girl, whom he had known so little, was now his top priority. The anger towards Sophia was still there, but the desire to protect his daughter was stronger. He spent hours at the hospital watching Helena, holding her small hand, telling stories. The girl, with her sweetness, quickly became attached to the father she barely knew. Emotional moments between father and daughter began to blossom, small seeds of a love that had been stolen by fate. Daniel felt a lump in his throat every time he saw Helena smile, a smile he never thought he would experience as a father. The forced rapprochement due to Helena's illness, despite the initial tension, began to build a bridge between Daniel and Sophia. They were united by their love for their daughter. Despite the anger and pain that still lingered between them, their love for Helena was an unbreakable bond, a force greater than any resentment. Daniel and Sophia found themselves compelled to share the same space, exchange information about their daughter's treatment, and make decisions together. Each interaction was a delicate dance between wounded pride and the urgent need for collaboration. Daniel, with his natural authority, began to take control of the medical aspects, mobilizing the best specialists, ensuring Helena received the most advanced treatment. He used his power and resources to ensure his daughter lacked nothing, and Sophia, though still hurt by his harsh words, couldn't deny her gratitude for this attitude. In moments of vulnerability, as they watched Helena sleep, the silence between them was filled with stolen glances, memories of the past floating in the air. Daniel would catch her observing him, and he, in turn, would see her with tear-filled eyes, the fragility behind the fortress she had built. The barbs between them still existed, small verbal jabs that served to maintain distance and protect their hearts. "I hope you've realized the price of your sacrifice, Sophia," he would say, his voice laden with ambiguous tones, "because now we are all paying for it." She in turn would respond with the same haughtiness. "The price is mine to pay, Daniel, and I do it with my head held high, knowing that I gave you the chance to be who you are today." But beneath the harshness of the words,
day by day, Daniel's wall began to crumble a little more. He found himself taking Sophia's hand in moments of panic, offering a tissue when she cried in silence. Her presence, the way she cared for Helena, the resilience she displayed even amidst such pain, began to rekindle the aberration he felt for her in the past. That dormant love, buried under layers of anger and success, began to show signs of life, like a small flame amidst ashes. However, the drama was far from over. Daniel's constant presence at the hospital, the sudden intimacy with Sophia, and the bombshell revelation of Helena's paternity did not go unnoticed. Vanessa Dubois, the contractual fiancée, was a natural predator, with keen instincts for detecting threats to her territory. She had noticed the change in Daniel's behavior, the way his eyes softened when he spoke of Helena, the palpable tension between him and Sophia. News about Sophia's daughter and the need for a donor reached her ears distorted, but sufficient to trigger an alarm. When Vanessa finally discovered the truth that Daniel was Helena's father, and worse, the compatible donor, her fury was uncontrollable. Her carefully orchestrated plans to cement her position as the CEO's wife, the lady of high society, were at risk. Sophia, the humble cleaner, was now a direct threat, a thorn in her side that needed to be removed at all costs. Vanessa spared no effort when it came to protecting her interests. She began to plan Daniel and Sophia's separation with calculating cruelty, using blackmail and manipulations that would affect not only their personal lives, but also Daniel's business empire. Vanessa, with her contacts in the press and her network of intrigues, began to plant false news, distorting the story. She leaked information to sensationalist tabloids, creating a narrative that Sophia was a social climber, an opportunistic woman who had gotten pregnant by Daniel to trap him and now, with her daughter's illness, was using the child to extort money and power. The headlines were cruel. Cleaner gets CEO pregnant and returns 5 years later demanding fortune. Sick daughter, Daniel Foster's ex-girlfriend's final blow. She manipulated public opinion, turning Sophia into a villain and herself into a victim. The betrayed fiancée, the elegant woman who was being deceived by an opportunist. Social media exploded with malicious comments, with people judging Sophia without knowing the truth. The pressure was overwhelming, and Sophia, already exhausted and fragile from her daughter's illness, felt completely helpless. Vanessa used blackmail to pressure Daniel, threatening to expose business secrets, fraudulent contracts, and shady investments that could shake his company's reputation and consequently his fortune. "You will choose, Daniel," she said with a cold smile, sitting in her luxurious office, "your reputation and your empire, or the cleaner and her illegitimate daughter. The choice is yours, but the consequences will be terrible." She made sure that Daniel felt the scarcity of his options in every fiber of his being. Vanessa also approached Daniel's family, especially his mother, a conservative woman concerned with social image. She planted doubts and venom in her mother-in-law's ears, distorting Sophia's image, making her seem a threat to the Foster family's reputation. The pressure on Daniel became unbearable. He found himself at a crossroads. His love for his daughter and the woman he realized he still loved, or the protection of his empire, his reputation, and the future of his company. The authority and power he had built so carefully were now being used against him, and the villain was playing a dirty game, exploiting every vulnerability. What she didn't expect, however, was the strength of a father's love for his daughter, and the truth that, sooner or later, would find its way into the light. The climax was approaching, and the final battle was about to begin. The tension in the air was palpable, cutting like a blade. Daniel found himself in the eye of the storm, torn between loyalty to his empire and the unconditional love that blossomed in his heart for Helena and, he was beginning to admit, for Sophia. Vanessa's attacks intensified, with the sensationalist media publishing more and more lies and distortions, turning public opinion against Sophia. The young woman's life had become a public hell, the target of cruel comments and contemptuous looks. She tried to stay strong for her daughter, but the pain of injustice and humiliation was overwhelming.
Sophia, in her vulnerability, felt unworthy of Daniel's love. The guilt of the past, the shame of her current situation, all of this made her believe that she did not deserve happiness with him. "You deserve someone better, Daniel," she whispered, in a moment of outburst as they watched Helena sleep. "Someone who doesn't have a past like mine, someone who hasn't been the cause of your pain." Daniel looked at her, his eyes now filled with an understanding that he previously lacked. He saw her pain, the weight of the sacrifice she had made, and with each day his anger turned into empathy and regret. Vanessa, realizing that Daniel was leaning towards Sophia and Helena, decided to deliver her final blow. She organized a fake press conference, inviting all the big names in the media, and planned to expose fabricated evidence that would incriminate Sophia for extortion and fraud. Her goal was to destroy Sophia's reputation irrevocably, driving her away from Daniel and, by extension, from Helena. Vanessa's intention was not only to slander Sophia, but also to shake Daniel's credibility, forcing him to distance himself from his daughter's mother to save his company. It was scarcity taken to the extreme. Daniel needed to choose between love and power, and Vanessa was determined to ensure that he chose power. But in the midst of the storm, Helena's health took a drastic turn for the worse. She suffered a severe crisis, her small body trembling in convulsions, her fever reaching dangerous peaks. The doctors, in desperation, informed Daniel and Sophia that the transplant needed to be done immediately, or the girl would not survive. That was the crucial moment, urgency in its most brutal form.
Daniel, seeing his daughter in imminent danger of death, felt the fury and pain that Vanessa caused him turn into an unwavering determination. Nothing mattered more than saving Helena. His empire, his reputation, the sham engagement, everything became irrelevant in the face of his daughter's life. He made the most important decision of his life. Without hesitation, he prepared for the bone marrow donation. The donation scene was charged with emotion. Daniel, lying on the stretcher, his face serious, but his eyes fixed on Sophia, who watched him with tears of gratitude and a new hope. He wasn't just donating his marrow, he was donating a second chance, undeniable proof of his love for Helena and his redemption as a father. Little Helena, in her fragility, received the transplant, and the following hours were filled with anguish and prayers. While Helena fought for her life, Daniel, now driven by a force he didn't know he possessed, decided to confront Vanessa. He knew her press conference was scheduled for that day, and he wouldn't allow her to destroy Sophia's life and his family. He invaded Vanessa's press conference, which was about to begin her victim performance. The room was packed with journalists, cameras, and flashes. Vanessa, with a victorious smile on her lips, was about to utter her lies when Daniel entered, imposing, his eyes fixed on her. "Enough, Vanessa." Daniel's voice echoed in the room, silencing everyone. Vanessa looked at him, the surprise on her face, but quickly recovered. "Daniel, my love, what are you doing here?" "I was about to defend our name." Daniel approached her, his eyes sparkling. "You're not going to defend any name, Vanessa. You are going to expose your own lies." He turned to the crowd of journalists, his voice strong and clear. "I am Daniel Foster, CEO of Foster Tech, and I am here to expose a fraud and tell the truth." The journalists were in turmoil, the flashes firing incessantly. Daniel, with the authority that was peculiar to him, began to expose Vanessa's manipulations, the false documents she had prepared, the blackmail she had done. He presented irrefutable evidence of her intrigues, of how she had tried to destroy Sophia and shake his company. With each revelation, Vanessa's face paled, her smile disappeared, giving way to an expression of desperation. He spared no details, exposing Vanessa's selfish motives, her thirst for power, and her lack of scruples. "I was wrong to associate with you, Vanessa, but I will not allow you to destroy my family. Helena is my daughter, and Sophia is the woman I love." Daniel's last words caused a stir in the room. The truth, finally, was coming to light, naked and raw. The villain, Vanessa Dubois, was publicly unmasked, her lies exposed to the world. Her reputation was destroyed in the blink of an eye, and she left the room humiliated, surrounded by journalists thirsty for more details of her downfall. In the hospital, Sophia watched the press conference on television,
tears streaming down her face. Daniel's words, his declaration of love and public recognition of Helena, filled her with overwhelming emotion. He had chosen family. He had chosen love. The proof was there before her. Daniel's redemption, the emotional justice she so deserved. The climax had arrived, and the promise of a new beginning hung in the air. The dawn of a new day brought with it the promise of a new beginning. Helena, after the transplant surgery, was recovering miraculously. Her little face, once pale and fragile, now displayed a slight blush, and her curious eyes were beginning to shine again. The little warrior had won the battle thanks to the love and sacrifice of her father.
In the hospital room, Daniel and Sophia were together, watching Helena sleep peacefully. The silence between them, once laden with tension and hurt, was now filled with a deep serenity, with a mutual understanding that transcended words. Daniel turned to Sophia, his eyes filled with tears, but also with a peace he hadn't felt in years. "Sophia, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for all the harsh words, for all the pain I caused you. I didn't know. I didn't understand your sacrifice. I was a fool, blinded by hurt and pride." His voice was choked, and he knelt before her, holding her hands. "I beg your forgiveness, Sophia. Forgiveness for making you suffer, for doubting your love." Sophia, with teary eyes, made him stand up. "Daniel, I'm so sorry too. I'm so sorry for hiding the truth, for depriving you of Helena. I just wanted your good, for you to fulfill your dreams. I didn't know how to tell you without hurting you." Tears flowed freely down both faces, washing away the wounds of the past, dissolving the hurt and pride that had separated them for so many years. They hugged each other, a tight hug, full of longing, relief, and a love that had never died. It was a reconciliation hug, a gesture that sealed forgiveness and the promise of a future together. Reciprocity was there at that moment in every shared tear, in every word of forgiveness. In that hug, Sophia finally revealed the whole truth about the past, about the fear of being a burden, about the decision to protect him from an unexpected pregnancy that could compromise his scholarship and his future. Daniel listened, his eyes fixed on hers, understanding finally settling in. He understood the depth of her love, the greatness of her sacrifice. Together, they were called the love that united them in the past, the whispered promises and youthful dreams. They laughed and cried, revisiting every memory, every moment that had shaped them. Their history, once distorted by pain and silence, was now retold with clarity and emotion. The days that followed were of a happiness that Sophia never imagined was possible. Daniel, now a transformed man, dedicated his time to his daughter and the woman he loved. He continued to be the powerful and respected CEO, but his scale of values had changed drastically. The empire he had built, once the center of his life, was now a means to ensure the well-being of his family, to provide them with the life that Sophia had dreamed of so much. He used his influence and resources to create a foundation to support children with rare diseases in honor of Helena. And Sophia became an active part of this project, finding a new purpose in her life. They decided to start over, no longer as lovers separated by a secret, but as a family united by love, overcoming, and gratitude. Daniel proposed to Sophia, not with an exorbitant diamond ring, but with a simple but meaningful engagement ring that he had kept for years, a relic of his youthful love. Sophia, with tears in her eyes, accepted. Little Helena, now radiant and full of life, was the flower that blossomed from adversity. She had a loving mother and a father who adored her, a man she barely knew, but who became her hero. Helena's laughter echoed in the new house, a home that Daniel and Sophia built together, full of love, respect, and the promise of a bright future. Sophia left behind a life of hardship, but never forgot her origins.
She became a strong and confident woman, always with the sweetness that characterized her, but now with the strength of someone who has overcome great obstacles. Her story was a living proof that true love can overcome any adversity, that human resilience is capable of moving mountains.
The final scene is breathtaking. Daniel, Sophia, and Helena are in an open field under a blue sky, running and laughing, their hands joined, a perfect portrait of a happy and complete family. Daniel holds Helena in his arms while Sophia hugs him from behind, the smile on her lips revealing the peace and happiness they have finally found. The camera slowly moves away, showing the three together, the image of overcoming, of true love and victory over adversity. A powerful message about the value of sacrifice, truth, and redemption. And so, what did you think of this emotional roller coaster? A story of love, sacrifice, and redemption that reminds us that true power lies in the ability to love and forgive. Leave your comment below. What was the part that moved you the most? Share your impressions with us, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more addictive stories like this. What will be the next forbidden romance we will unravel together?